Pest Geek Podcast, episode number 1. Pull out your hose and grab your can. We're about to integrate another Pest Geek Podcast. Hi, everybody. Frank Hernandez here, and welcome to the Pest Geek Podcast, bringing you the latest news, products, and politics from today's leading industry pros, offering you their technical marketing and growth strategies to give you, the pest management professional, that killer edge. Hey, well, welcome to the first episode of the Pest Geek Podcast. And just like to do a little bit of a background on this program. We got the idea back in 2014. I started doodling with this idea sometime around about June of 2014. And I figured, well, we get everything together and we'll probably get this thing started. We started doing the research, the feasibility study on if this would work or not. And we went through about 4 months of studying everything we needed to get this done. And I decided that we would probably launch in New Year's of 2015. Well, it has taken us approximately 8 months, 4 months longer than I thought it would, about 10 months actually. And here we are with our first podcast. And I'm one of those guys that I'm an entrepreneur. I'm not a scientist. And when I get an idea to do something, just like I've done in all my businesses, I do very good research, and then I just execute and I move forward, regardless of whether anybody's on board with a lot of these projects. Because what I've learned over many years, about 25 years of doing business, is that if you're a pioneer and you're a creative person, there's going to be more naysayers than there are going to be people who are going to jump on board. So I decided that we were still in the preparation stage, and until about the first of this month, I said, we got to launch. We got to, we've got everything we're going to get, and all the knowledge and understanding that we're going to have about launching this podcast. And I decided we're going to move forward. I've invited a lot of people to come on board, but, people are not early adopters to a lot of things. I'm an early adopter. I like to get into new technology and new things and new tactics and new products. And I like every time a new product comes out into the market, I will test it. I will buy it. I will test it. I will speak to the manufacturers about it, the best way to apply it, the best target pest for this. And we will try the product, and we try a lot of techniques. We do a lot of research and development, but I'm an early adopter, and I like to be on the cutting edge of technology. And nobody's jumped on board yet. This is our first podcast, and we wrote a couple of letters out to a couple of people, to the extension service, to the university, to try to get people on board. Even a couple of sales rep and manufacturers reps. And nobody's jumped on board yet. So I decided to launch it anyway. And let's go forward. And I said, well, what are we going to talk about? I don't like monologues. I like conversations. And I like dealing, the one-on-ones are my favorite. Crowds are good. I have no problem with public speaking, but I enjoy the one-on-ones. I enjoy the brainstorming sessions with a couple of people that are very knowledgeable in certain areas, and have brainstorming sessions to do certain things. So I decided, I was torn between two subjects to talk about on this first show, and one of them is a little ant that is, pretty much caused havoc down here in South Florida. Now, I'm in Miami. If you're listening around the world, I'm in Miami, Florida, and way down south in Miami-Dade County, and we have this species here known as the white-footed ant. That's what most people know it as. It was originally found in Miami, in Miami-Dade County, in the New World, actually, in North America, back in 1986. So we've had it here quite a while now, about 19 years, and it's moved across pretty much the entire south of the United States, Louisiana, Georgia, South Carolina, all the way out into Washington. In Seattle, it's been found. So pretty much the entire southern United States, in the West Indies, in Antigua, Nevis, Puerto Rico, St. Croix, and St. Thomas. So very humid areas. It's found in the southern United States and pretty much in the Caribbean. And this little ant is quite really a nightmare when it does infest a property. When I first came across it back in 96, when I first started, this ant was a nightmare. And the reason it is because of the way that it populates, and the homeowners and the property owners don't seem to notice it until pretty much it's too late. And they're totally infested with this little ant because your colony can have anywhere between 800,000 and 3 million ants. And this is not, when you're speaking to clients, to them, these numbers are not logical. They're not foundable. They can't reason with something like this. It's very difficult. And you have to explain things in a way to them that they can relate. And kind of the example I always use with a customer is, these ants are a lot like tumors in the body. It starts out with something that feels like a pimple in your neck, but you ignore it long enough, and all of a sudden you have a golf ball size, and then you get the really bad news that it's a lot worse than you thought because you neglected it. And they're not aware. They're calling somebody when all of a sudden their trails have been going on all over the outside of this house for months. And now they're coming out through all the outlets. They're coming out everywhere. There's trailing everywhere. And they are spraying inside the house, and it seems like nothing is taking care of this. My first experience with it was actually a nightmare. I go back to probably where it was a real bad one. This customer of mine called me. Actually, he wasn't a customer. He met me, and he says, "Man, I have this ant problem in my house that I can't get rid of. I've sprayed. I've done everything I can, and I will leave for the weekend, and when I come back, there is literally thousands and thousands of ants all over my floor. But I never see them where they come from or where they go. They're just there every single hour. I'll clean on Friday, and Saturday morning, they're all over the living room like there's a foot-wide band." And I thought he was joking. So I went out, took a look at the property, and he says, "I left it for you so you can see it." And when he swept it up, it must have been a good size of a softball, the amount of material that he picked up. These were thousands and thousands of ants. We started a void treatment. Back then, they were recommending void treatment, dusting. We couldn't dust this place. We had to dust the attic. It was so bad on the second floor, but mostly on the first floor. And we couldn't figure it out, and we found, I found a little trail in the sliding door, and we decided, yeah, let me, take a little bit of my crack and crevice spray, and I'll just treat that little crack and crevice. When I did that, there were cracks and crevices all over that door, and literally hundreds of thousands of ants came out of that structure. He was in shock. He didn't realize how bad this was. And we're talking about the wall was starting to turn black. This is how infested this was. Well, it took us a really long while for me to have a learning curve on that ant. And we were treating it with your traditional spray. We were injecting the area. And it took us about 6 months, really, to get control of that. That's how bad that was. Now, this is a townhouse, which is a multi-unit dwelling, and literally it's about 6 units. And so it's one structure, and you're trying to control it in this one-man structure. And we know that now there had to be many nests outside and all over the property. We managed to control it. We never told them we could guarantee that we could actually get rid of it completely. But it looks like we were able to control it to a way that it was no longer, a huge issue for him. And what we were recommended in the past is always dusty attics, because that's how you prevent it. Well, that gets pretty costly because you have to dust every attic unnecessarily. It could get really expensive for you as a service to be dusting the attic every year if you don't need to. So what I started doing is I started doing a lot of doing a lot of studying on this one ant with liquid baits and granular baits. And what I found is that the liquid baits, the glucose baits, were the most effective at controlling this ant. I mean, back when we were doing this, people were saying, well, use Thermador. Well, Thermador has so many restrictions on it. You got to have a dedicated sprayer for it. You can only spray a foot-wide band around the property. You can't go out further than that. You can't do trees or shrubs or lawn with it. You can only use it twice a year. So the restrictions, so they say, well, just spray the perimeter around with Thermador when you have a heavy ant trail, and that'll knock it out. Well, we did that once, and we came back 3 days later, and we had those trails going everywhere. Nothing, that wasn't working. So we decided to go with the liquid bait on the outside. And you might be saying, you're going to use liquid bait on the outside? Yeah, we actually do. I have a video we're going to put up on the website and on YouTube on this channel, so you can see this massive amount of trailing that was happening throughout this whole house. Customer calls me all panicked. All of a sudden, these trails are going everywhere. And we decide we're going to use the bait only. And we baited everything. We went back the next day. It was about 99% gone in one shot, without having to spray the entire property, without having to contaminate it. So that is, the reason is that these little ants, and let's talk about IDing these ants, because a lot of people don't know, especially if you're new, and please forgive me if I tend to dumb this down a bit, or some people might be offended that I'm oversimplifying sometimes or dumbing it down, but there's a lot of new people that I talk to, a lot of new technicians that they've been in this a little while, and they don't understand a lot of the terminology. It's not explained to them. I've found out down here. I don't know what it's like in your part of the world, if training is very good where you come from. But down here, the training has been, from what I've experienced, really bad. Most of the time, like I've said before, it's, all you do is spray this, and this is how you spray it. They don't try to teach people a lot of pest identification, a lot of the entomological information, the breeding. They mainly are concerned with spraying. And that's pretty much what I find. And that's what has me so concerned in this matter. And this is why I've taken up this cause to do what I do. But the identification, this little ant is very small, but it's bigger. The body is a little bit more robust than your Caribbean, or I'm sorry, your crazy ant. The one that you just find running everywhere, and it has a real slender body with longer legs. This one is actually a bit more robust. It's black. It looks very black. It's actually a brownish black ant, but it looks very, very black. And when you take your little lens, the only way you're really going to identify is you take your lens and you will look at the legs and you look at the tips of the feet, and it looks like little whitish, yellowish white, tarsi, the feet. So it's got a one segmented waist. It doesn't have multiple segments in the waist. Now, the other thing is the antenna. You look at the antenna, it has a 12 segmented antenna. So that should help you. Those, the white legs and the 12 segmented antenna, that should be good enough for you to identify that you've got white-footed ant. Okay. It doesn't sting. There's not a whole lot of hair. It has a few hairs, but it's not very hairy. So you can't depend on that. But I would say, if you're looking at the color, the white foot, and also the antenna, you were able to count the segments on the antenna, that should get you really good at identifying this ant. Now, the issue with this ant is the way it multiplies. And it multiplies by budding. It's one of those ants that uses budding to multiply. And half of the ant colony is composed of fertile, productive females. Okay? So it's a very, very highly reproductive colony. Now, most customers will call during a time you're going to expect calls between like July and August, those months where the female flyers are released during that time of the year. And they'll meet up with the winged males, and they will basically, procreate and become reproductive. And that's how they end up during that time of year. People will call all of a sudden. They have all these ants, and they think they have termites. I always get calls and people saying, I think I have termites. I have these what appear to be flying ants, and they're almost dumbfounded. Like they don't really know that there are, flying ants. I mean, most people are not in this business. They don't know. And this is why it's so important that you, as the professional, are able to explain in detail what is happening to the customer so that they're at ease and that they know that you're a true professional. This is what's so important about explaining this to a customer, explaining how this ant will reproduce and become a nightmare if it's not dealt with properly. How they will multiply the way they do. Now, the way they bud is what they do is basically one of the females will take a whole bunch of other people with them and start a new nest, and they break off and create a new nest, and they do this continuously. So it's not like you do just one time. This happens continuously, and you might have around a property, around a house, you might have several nests with several hundred thousands of these ants up in trees, up in palms, in shrubs. They're pretty much everywhere. They like to go up. So if you're outside the property and you're searching for these, you want to be looking up. You want to be looking at the trees. You got trees. You want to see the trails on the trees if you got the same ant. If you have shrubs up against the house, you're going to find trails because what happens is they will create this pheromone trail that they'll leave behind. And anytime you see a trail, what you know is one thing. They have found food source. When you find a trail of ants, they're not looking. They have found. So they will go back and get a bunch of other nest mates, and they will go out and become foragers to go and get, along this pheromone, go and get this honeydew off of the tree. And where do they get the honeydew from? Well, it's very simple. They will, they're like my fabulous 5 insects that create honeydew. Whiteflies, mealybugs, scale, and what do you call that? Aphids, not too much. I haven't seen too much with the aphids as a big deal, but they do produce the honeydew. I mean, most of it will do it. So you're looking at those 5 insects that you will find on these shrubs that are probably totally infested with honeydew. The leaves up on the tree will have honeydew. So at this point, you need to treat the landscape as well as the structure. And if you're able to do systemic drench treatments, you're much better off doing a systemic root drench treatment, and that plant will probably stay without an infestation for a year, that you won't have to come back and respray it. I'm a big fan of systemic root drenching for shrubs for that reason, because I don't kill the pollinators spraying it all the time. Second, if you're on a rotation program about every 2 months, or you're on a 3-month program, you're never going to break the life cycle of the scale, the aphid, the mealybug, the whitefly. You're not going to break that life cycle with one spray every 2 months. You might as well just, do it one time, and you save yourself a ton of money, a ton of time. In about 30 days, that will all be dead. And whatever's on those shrubs and trees. And then you can focus on getting them out of the structure. What I like to do is get them out of the structure is, like I said, I use a lot of bait outside. And I will find the trail where they're trailing, and I will literally put bait across, liquid bait, actually a gel bait. And what I found, I've used a lot of them. I've used Bayer's products with Quantum. And one of the best ones, I've used Taro. But Taro, for some reason, didn't work that well. It's too liquefied. It's too runny. And so I found Thiquid by Rockwell Labs. And I tell you what, this product is phenomenal. Now, I don't get any advertising money for talking about these products. I will only recommend the product that I know works, and because I've used it and I like it, and it does produce results, I will talk about it. I don't have any advertisers telling me what products to push, and I don't do that. So what I do is I take the Thiquid, and the nice thing about Thiquid is that it comes in this little squirt dispenser, about a 2-ounce dispenser, and then I can just take it and squirt it across the trail. I'll do a foot long across it, so it forces them to run into it and go across it, and then across the line wherever that trail's going. I will just treat that entire trail. And what I will find out is that it will come back the next day. It's gone. Rarely do I have to do 2 treatments of that. If I got trees that they're climbing up into trees, I will create my own. I create my own little stations. And what I do is I take these little sauce cups from the restaurant, the little 1 or 2 ounce sauce cups with the lids that they use for sauces. And these are the little plastic translucent ones. I'll throw up some pictures of that on the website. For those of you who are interested, and we're going to put all these notes in the website and the videos and the pictures and the stuff that we're using. So you can go over to pestgeekpodcast.com, and on this podcast, which is podcast number 1 of the Pest Geek Podcast, you will be able to get all these show notes and everything that's in there. So what I'll do is I'll take these little cups, and I will take a hole puncher and just clip the side of that, make a little hole through the side, and then I will fill it with the Thiquid. And I usually will water down that Thiquid in a station at 50%. So I'll half water, half of the Thiquid, and I'll put that cup about halfway full, and I'll stick it somewhere in that tree where that trail is. And what I'll find is they'll be going at it, and they'll take it up into that tree and kill it. If you got small trees or small little areas, I will take some of there are these little sticks that they use for keeping little like a single rose or a single plant. They use it a lot in orchids to get orchids, and then just put the little orchid in there, and it has water, and it'll hold it for several weeks. What I do is I take those and I fill it with the Thiquid, cut again. It has a little hole already, and then I'll just put 4 or 5 of those around a shrub or a tree that they're coming out, and they'll go in there and they will take that bait. So it's many ways. Inside the house, I just put drops on the counter. I'll put a drop about every foot along the edge of the counter, along the back if I'm finding those ants there, or anywhere that I see the ants trailing in the house. That's how I will do it. I'll just put a little drop. Now, what you have to know about liquid baits is once an ant falls into that bait and dies, that bait is useless. That bait has to get removed and reapplied because it becomes very acidic. So the ant won't eat it anymore after that. So people say, oh, you put down the drop, but they didn't eat any more of it, and I'm still seeing them trailing. If there's an ant dead in those little things, they're not going to. So you clean it out, just wipe it down, and reapply it again. And that's the issue with baits, is that you do have to reapply. But it's going to get rid of your nesting problem. It's not going to be, hidden by using a pyrethroid that's repelling it. And if you use a pyrethroid with white-footed ants in the house, and you spray a baseboard, and you spray the outside with a pyrethroid, you're going to trap them in there. You're going to have a serious problem of trapping that ant, because now they sense the chemical and they stay there. And these guys can feed on themselves. I mean, if they die, they become cannibalistic. They also can have trophic eggs that they can feed on. So they don't need to come out if they don't have to, and they can wait it out until that residual is gone. And you're just not going to get rid of that problem. Sprays, very ineffective. I mean, if you got a 50-foot tree, I don't know how you're going to spray it without getting wind drift, 10 miles down the road, spraying a big tree like that. So you can treat the tree and also use the bait, and that will get you control. One of the things that drove me nuts with this ant is the way that they can just climb through anywhere. I had one house that they had a tree in the backyard, and they had a bunch of palm trees. But this one particular tree was touching the house, and the tree was just infested with it. And the customer kept telling me they're coming in, they're in the bathroom, so we baited that bathroom everywhere. We couldn't get any trails. Well, I found out that what the ant was doing is that they were getting off the tree, climbing up the roof, down the vent, and coming down out of the ceiling fan, the fan that is in the attic, the vent fan, the exhaust fan, and coming down and falling right where that fan was over a tub. And I say, man, it's only here over this tub. So I go outside, look. Well, what do? We just pruned it. Took that tree, pruned off those branches, and that took care of that problem on the inside of the house. We also will prune anything that's touching the house. If you have shrubs that are touching the house, you need to have those trimmed. You need to get the landscaper, if you don't do it, to trim those bushes about 4 inches away from that house. That is the most effective way that you're going to have for reducing that. If you're going to use baits outside, especially liquids, you cannot be spraying. You cannot do a perimeter spray and then try to go lay liquid bait outside. It's just not going to work. You're just going to, you're going to waste the chemical and, waste the time that you spend baiting. So you do one or the other. If I have shrubs, I can use a natural spray that will, like an oil spray that will break up that sooty mold and that honeydew and break it down very quickly, in addition to doing shrub treatment. So I will treat that shrub systemically if I have it. I do not mess around waiting to respray and respray and respray coming back unless the customer has specifically asked that, we don't, because they're allergic. They don't want to use any chemicals around the property. And then we will just use a natural spray, which I use. I've been using Essentra. That's been one of my products that I've been using, but I found that with the Essentra, the oil, it's a peppermint oil and thyme oil mix, but the emulsifier in it is not really good. So what I did was I took, I'm down here in Florida and we have public supermarkets, and I found their dishwashing soap, which is the Mild and Gentle dishwashing soap. Okay. And with that dishwashing soap, I mix it together about a half an ounce per gallon, and I'll take about a quart mix, and I'll mix about, and I use a backpack. I don't use a power sprayer. I use a backpack pretty much for everything. I have about 3 backpacks in my truck, and they're all dedicated. And this one is my organic, natural one. And what I'll do is I'll take that and mix about 20 ml of that oil, of the Essentra, with about a half an ounce per gallon of the Mild and Gentle dish soap. It works marvelous. I will do 2 to 3 applications with that on any shrub that has mealybug, that have aphids, that have scale, that have whiteflies. Any of those, I will go ahead and treat it with that and spray it. And I will do it at an interval about every 5 days to break the life cycle of those sucking, piercing insects. And that's it. It knocks them out. And if I'm on a 2-month cycle, I can usually get control after that. So, it's one of those things that I'm usually on my properties once a month. The way I do an all-inclusive program for my customers, for their shrub, for their lawn, for their home, and I'm on there inspecting everything once a month. So I can get to see a property more often than most people will. But if you're not going to be able to do that, then you're probably better off doing a systemic than just wasting pesticide sprays on these insects if you have an infestation. So that's been, one of the things that I use. If I got to use a dust for the attic and I got we're talking about a massive, I will inspect that attic. I pull back the insulation and I find that there's just ants just going crazy everywhere. Then I'm going to treat that attic, and I'm going to use, I switched over. I stopped using boric acid about a year ago because I wasn't getting the results with the boric acid that I was expecting. I didn't want to use DE because DE as a dust in an open area, you don't want to inhale it. So I switched over and I tried a silica dust powder that we're using that works really, really good. It's a desiccant, and the reason I like the desiccant is because it doesn't have to ingest it. Like with the boric acid, insects have to ingest when they bathe. They have to ingest the boric acid. With this, they don't have to. They can just walk across it, come in contact with it, and it's going to cut them up like a ninja. I mean, they're just going to start losing body parts. That exoskeleton is going to just destroy their exoskeleton and get control of that very, very quickly. It's also what I use in all my void treatments. And when I do void and I do kitchen voids and I do electrical voids, when I do my void work, that's exclusively what I do. I also like to use it for bee work. If I can't get that hive out, I can't get it, I will use the dust versus using a pyrethroid. I mean, the whole idea is to be as effective, to be really effective but also to be conscientious of the environment. If you can find a product that can do the job in an environmentally friendly manner, and why do you have to use a synthetic pesticide when something that is natural will do the job much better? For these scale aphids, mealybugs, and whitefly, I find that if I'm going to go to a spray program, the natural product works much better than bifenthrin will, than permethrin will, because it does two things. It cuts the honeydew, it kills it, and it also kills the insect in the different life cycle. I've even been able to use it on low bait scale. And people say, well, you can't use it on low bait scale because low bait scale is too hard. Well, it's not going to kill the adults, but if I apply it about every 5 days, I'm going to get them in those molting stages, and I'm going to bring it down. And I've been able to successfully do that with ornamentals, is spray that for palm trees with whiteflies that are around pools. And you don't want to spray a pyrethroid around a pool unnecessarily. That's what I will use. I'll use the natural product. It knocks them right out. It totally gets them. So this is what we've been looking at with this white-footed ant and my experience with it. And I really hope that this product will help you. This program will help you. And like I said, go to the show notes, and I'm going to put all these products that we use on those show notes so you can get links to the manufacturer. We're not selling them directly. We're not getting any commission off of this, but you can get all the information from these products through the website at pestgeekpodcast.com. And until next time, I wish you well. I want to keep you on the killer edge. Take care. Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to the Pest Geek Podcast. If you have enjoyed the Pest Geek Podcast, please give us a rating, write a review, or subscribe to the channel. You can join the Pest Geek Society by visiting pestgeekpodcast.com. Thank you for listening. See you next time.